Hello, hello, and welcome to another edition of Wander and Muse. I'm your host, Heather Wolpern, and today's guest is Gayle Petrillo. Good morning, Gayle.
Hi, Heather. Thanks so much for having me as your guest this morning.
I'm
so excited.
I'm excited too. I'm glad you're here, and I love how Tucson has so many connections. It's 1 or 2 degrees of separation between everyone. So
It is so true. It's such a small world.
So we have the mutual friend of Elena Kova, and she's like,
Right.
"Hey, you should go and have this show too."
Yeah.
So thanks for being here.
Thank you for the invite.
So I know that you have written a book called The Accident. Oh,
I
thanks for bringing
did.
one. Yeah. And I really want to hear about how it all started. I know that you had an accident when you were 3 years old. So first talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So there was never a book going to be. There was never my story going to be.
Right.
At 2.5, my mom took me to a neighbor's for a grown-up tea party, mom and daughter, right?
Right.
And there were like 8 of us. And so we were playing in the fall leaves in upstate New York where I grew up.
Okay.
And the smell of the cookies was drifting out the screen door. And so they were calling for us kids to come in, and we came in, snowsuits, right? All bundled up.
Right.
And I started to climb up to a high table.
Okay.
And reached for a cookie.
Right.
And they had just put a fresh pot of coffee on the table. So reaching for the cookie, I knocked the percolator full of coffee off the table and all over me. So the snowsuit acted like a magnet, drew the heat in, burned 40% of my body.
Oh my goodness.
I was in the hospital for months. My parents.
Did you say 4 months?
4 months. FOR.
Oh,
months.
Okay.
Just because I don't know how long. My mom, she just passed 2 months ago, but to the day she passed, she wouldn't talk about it.
Oh my goodness.
We never talked about the accident.
Oh.
So growing up, I have scars like 3/4 of my body.
Okay.
Fortunately or unfortunately, no one sees them.
Right.
So I'm very able to hide them.
Right.
And so I kept the secret for 65 years.
Oh.
My family, my friends, my colleagues, no one knew.
Really?
Really. So I grew up with a huge sense of lack of confidence.
I bet.
Body image issues.
Sure.
I covered mirrors in my bedroom. There are stories in the book told for the very first time about going into gym class, right? As a preteen.
You would change in the locker rooms.
And you would change, not with everybody, but I'd go into the bathroom.
Oh, okay.
And come out and people would be like,
they just thought you were
her
super
problem?
modest. Yeah.
No, just stupid, weird.
How mean they were.
Right. Kids can be really mean. And in the book, there's a story about going to my first slumber party. And so all of us girls, I told my mom I didn't want to go. And she's like, you'll have so much fun. Go. I wasn't sure. I finally decided I would go. Everybody, we had a blast. I think we had pizza for dinner. And come 8:30, everybody's like stripping into their pajamas and laying out their sleeping bags. And I disappear into the bathroom and come out all teeth brushed and PJs on. And they all went, they looked at me. And I was never invited back to another slumber party because I was just the weird girl. I never trusted people, because people can be cruel as they were.
Yes.
So I grew up with this image of feeling like people saw me the way I saw me.
Right.
From the outside in.
Yeah.
And so I just pulled my big girl pants up and went on through life.
Goodness.
My background professionally is in healthcare.
Okay.
So I ran large hospital departments, big medical groups back east in Tucson and in Phoenix for 5 years. And when I left Phoenix and came back to Tucson, I was trying to find the same or similar job that I had in Phoenix, which literally was the best job I'd ever had.
Okay.
Best money, best people, most autonomy. It was incredible.
Okay.
But I came back to Tucson. Al was here in the house, and I was up there in a condo, and we were playing the travel game, which wasn't fun.
That gets old.
During that 4.5 years, we lost my brother-in-law, my father-in-law, and my dad.
Oh, goodness.
And all 3 of those calls came while he was here and I was there. And so I came home one weekend and I just said, this isn't healthy for us. Al and I have been together 45 years, married 43, almost 44. And so we agreed. So I went to my board of directors, which was all physicians. And I said, I'm going to go back to Tucson. They're like, we'll buy your house. You have to stay with us. And I'm like, we really want to be back in Tucson. So I came back trying to find a job similar to what I had, and I couldn't. So my brilliant husband said, why don't you open your own HR consulting firm? That's what you've done a lot of.
Right, that's what you know.
Right. And I do what I tell my coaching clients to do, make a list of pros and cons. And the cons were way longer than the pros. Right. Liability issues, done with comp and benefits, done with employee relations, all of that stuff. Yeah. And so I did start a consulting business, but it was all about image, body image, because I found I was mentoring people my whole career, whether it was the look of their resume or how they interviewed or didn't, what they wore, you know, the torn jeans. And some people today bring their parents to an interview. What the heck? Yeah, seriously. So that's how I started my coaching career and my business, First Impressions. So I launched with 2 fashion shows, and they were fundraisers for Beads of Courage.
Oh, sure.
Very
Beads
well
of
known.
Courage is a wonderful organization.
Wonderful. So I met Jean, the founder, through a mutual friend, 2 degrees of separation.
Yes,
right?
Of course.
Always goes back to that.
Yes.
So the first fashion show was at a smaller hotel. We had maybe 50 guests, whatever. It was small. It was great. I had never done anything like that, although I had planned events my whole career. But it was usually holiday parties and my daughter's wedding and things like that. So it was okay. So we were talked into doing it a second time, and we moved it to the Marriott.
JW Marriott?
Yes, thank you. JW Marriott Starr Bass Resort. It's beautiful. Yeah. We had over 200 people in our audience. We had over 55 vendors. We sold out. We had people from KVOA as the moderators.
Good PR.
It was amazing. So by that time, I had known Jean almost 3 years, and we were behind stage. There was entertainment going on the runway. And I said, Jean, I live vicariously through you, because she travels the world with beads.
Yeah.
It's international. And she said, well, funny, you know, now I'm a single parent, and I traipse my kids to a lot of sporting events. So we were just in Phoenix, and I spent a couple days with burn survivor kids at Phoenix Children's.
Oh, okay.
I opened my mouth, and literally, probably for the first time in my life, nothing came out. Simultaneously, the MCs were calling me to the podium.
Oh, wow.
So I walked away from her, got to the podium, had my script in hand, looked into the audience of 200 people. The only one who really thought they knew my whole story was my husband. And I said, and actually tears started to roll. And I'm like, so sorry, wiping away the tears. And I said, I was just backstage talking to Jean, who you will meet. I said, and she mentioned she had just spent a couple days with burn survivor kids. I wish my family and I had had that kind of support when I was burned as a toddler. There was lunch plates and tea cups and dead silence. And I just kept going with the program. So afterwards, there was a woman in the audience who I did not know. A friend had invited her. She's very well known in town. It's Kathy Bell. Her daughter was born with a blood disease, and she survived from blood transfusions up until she had a bone marrow transplant roughly 10 years ago.
That sounds rough.
So Kathy came up to me and she said, honey, you have a story to tell. I said, no, I don't, but I'd love to hear yours. So that was September. By the end of December, she had gotten my story out of me, which no one had ever done.
That's shocking, truly.
Right?
Yeah, to keep that all in. Wow.
Lots of tears, lots of wine. And that January was 2020. My sister and I were flying to Florida to see my mom. So over dinner and a lot of wine one night, I said, so I've been told or asked to tell my story. God love my mom. She looks at me and she said, what story?
Oh my God.
Because we never spoke about it. And I said, the accident that left me scarred. And she looked at me and my sister looked at me and they're like, we'll support you. What do you need?
Okay. Well,
so I came back. And of course, February, March of 2020, the world shut down. So my husband's a journalist, has been his whole life.
Oh, okay.
And I knocked on his door and I went in and he's like, what's up? And he's like, I just got off the conversation. I have to, type it up. what do you need? And I said, how do you write a book?
Oh my goodness.
And he just looked at me and he said, because I don't write. I've written policies and procedures.
Gotcha.
I had
but not a
never
writer.
written
Yeah.
a story,
Right.
my story, let alone
Little
my story.
different.
Little different. So he looked at me and he said, just go sit at your computer and type.
Yeah.
And he said, don't worry about a title. Don't worry about chapters. Just type.
Right.
And he's like, gotta go. So I'm like, okay, bye.
That's what I call brain vomit.
Yeah,
when you just get it all out, even if it's really messy, you'll print it up later. Yeah.
Exactly. So I did over the next several weeks. I sat at the computer, and every free minute I had, I just typed.
Fantastic.
I'd wake up in the middle of the night and have a thought and sit down at the computer. I was now a writer.
Yes.
So segue into probably April. And I knocked on my husband's door and I had a pile of papers in my hand. And I said, would you read this? He's like, what's that?
Oh, really?
I said,
so he didn't
that's
know?
my manuscript. He's like, really? Oh my goodness, right? Super supportive.
Yeah.
So he read it over the next couple of days, a couple of times. And he's like, I'm way too close to this.
Yes,
there were
agree.
things in there he didn't know. Because we had never really talked about it.
Amazing.
Like all the fine details.
Sure.
And so he said, you know, Lynn, I said, of course. He said, well, she's a ghostwriter and an editor and a book writer. Why don't we see if she'd read it for us?
Perfect.
So we paid her. She read it. She came back with great feedback. And I showed it to Kathy. And Kathy said, let's have 2 teenagers, a child psychologist I know, and a teacher I know read it.
Oh,
and we did.
Those are great perspectives.
The feedback was so incredible to me. I had no idea. The feedback was that it was inspirational. It was encouraging. It was heartfelt.
Right.
And kids in particular needed to hear the story, let alone adults.
Burn victim or not.
Right.
Just when you're talking about the body image and confidence and all that.
Exactly.
And your own personal story, even if, you know, it's a secret or not. It's important.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we all have secrets. We've all been burned physically, emotionally, right?
True.
And so I started sending the manuscript out to associations of psychology for kids and adults. And writing is such a catch-22. If you have an agent, if you don't have an agent, you can't get published. Right. If you don't have a publisher, you can't have an agent. And so I finally found this woman who owns her own publishing firm, and I sent her a piece of the manuscript. And within 15 minutes, she emailed me back and she said, my son was injured as a toddler. I have to publish this book.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so the book was published about 2 years ago.
Okay.
It's in English and in Spanish.
I noticed that. What a great idea. That's
so I connected with the Arizona Burn Foundation through LinkedIn.
Yeah, I interviewed Rex Albright at my last podcast that I had.
Did you really?
Yeah, and I really enjoyed talking to Rex. He was a great guy.
How did you guys connect?
He was a member of where I used to work, and those were the people who I interviewed. So,
oh my
yeah, and he was when you talked about the camps, that totally reminded me of the Arizona Burn Foundation, because he was saying how these kids who've grown up feeling so different, once they're with all these other kids telling their story and showing their burns and their scars and whatnot, it made them feel just so included and normal, because everybody was exactly like them. And it was really moving, just what he was talking about. But what a small world, right? Yeah, really important foundation.
So I found Rex and his organization through LinkedIn when I kind of came out of hiding. And ever since, it's been over 2 years now, I'm a very strong advocate and volunteer with them. So we now have 2 offices in Tucson, Arizona. I say we like I'm part of them. I'm just a volunteer. But we have an office at Fire Central right around the corner from you here.
Okay.
On Cushing Street. And then we have one in the burn unit at Banner UMC.
Oh, okay.
And so he actually has a full-time staff person down here now.
Right. I think
and we had our first fun run last February. We'll do our second annual this February. It's Saturday, February 3rd, I believe.
Okay.
On the Riverwalk, right off from where the racetrack is. And we had over 200 racers, runners last year.
Great.
We hope to have 350 to 500 this year. We're also going to have exhibitors. and sponsors. So I'm so excited about that. We have our first real fundraiser in April at Tono Chill.
Oh, good.
So I can share that information for you to share with your
listeners
if you'd like.
Those links.
So anyways, back to that. The Burn Foundation actually just sent my husband and I to World Burn Congress, which was in Maryland, sponsored by Phoenix Burn Society.
Okay.
And they had not had an in-person conference since COVID. And so now they're going to do that in person every 2 years.
Oh, good.
That, like the camps for kids, was an awakening for me.
I bet.
For much of the same reason. You see people with their scars showing.
Right.
People like me who don't have scars. There were breakout sessions for all of us about how we move past our history, our scars. We talk about prevention. I actually go into the schools and talk about prevention. I read my book to 5th graders and we talk about that. Right. So it's my turn to give back to the community.
That's fantastic.
And so I am board vice chair of the American Red Cross of Southern Arizona.
Oh, okay.
And so we do smoke alarm installations in low-income communities. Burn survivors survive in large part from blood, whole blood products, platelets, and plasma.
Okay.
And so that obviously speaks to my heart as well.
Right, right. Yeah, and it's the simplest or the littlest accidents that can really change someone's life. Like with you, you're reaching for a cookie and the boiling coffee came down on you. I remember now she's probably in her upper 20s, but one of my sister's friends' daughters was little, about how old you were when it happened, around 2 or 3 years old, where her mom was getting the boiling pot of water for pasta and just kind of went to turn to take it over to the kitchen sink, but the daughter had just happened to walk up right under her mom's legs and just had horrible scars and that sort of thing. A friend who fell asleep next to a campfire and her entire thigh had to get the skin graft. So it just in an instant, the littlest thing. It's not always with burns too. It's anything where just that one little instant and someone's life has changed.
Life has changed, right?
Now, what would you say to your 18-year-old self now about, say, friends invited you to the beach and you had to get into a bathing suit? What would you have said now that you have a better body image and all that?
Interesting question. So I think what I would say to my now 18-year-old self would be embrace your scars.
Yes.
Embrace who you are. People don't necessarily judge you until they've met you. I mean, part of that's not true, right? Because you only have 3 to 7 seconds to make a first impression.
Right.
So the first impression is your appearance.
Sure.
But it's also what you say. And so when you show somebody that you're a good listener, when you show somebody that you speak with articulation, with
or just smiling,
thought, and that's what I was just going to say, right? No, it's perfect. What a great segue, because what I coach my clients on is smiles are contagious. And so when you smile at somebody, what happens? They smile back at you.
It's so true.
And so for me, again, my scars don't show. So people aren't judging me by a disfigured face or arm or leg.
Right.
It's in my brain. It's always been in my head. So I would tell my 18-year-old self not to listen to that voice in your head, but listen to your heart, who you really are, and share your heart with people. Because that's what makes a difference in people's lives. And that's what it makes you accepted.
Right. And that's what people remember about you too. They remember, how they felt when they were around you, or just the memories. They don't remember, if your dress was flattering or not. They don't remember if you had a bad hair day. That really doesn't matter. It's more about your energy and just how people feel when they're around you. So
it's very true. Yeah.
Wow. And then real quick, with the coaching side of what you're doing now, talk a little bit more about that, because I feel that that's really important, to be aware of your nonverbals, to be aware of just what we're talking about, how you're presenting yourself. So could you give maybe a couple of tips to the listeners of just like quick, easy little things they could do to, make a better first impression?
Sure. Thank you. So My coaching is First Impressions. And
is there a website for that you
there
want to mention?
is. It's www.first spelled out impressions plural one the number one.com.
Okay.
And I'll share that with you.
Yeah.
So First Impressions is all about the soft skills. With my HR background, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly with resumes, all kinds of first impressions,
Handshakes.
right? Handshakes. Oh, please. So here's a tip for your readers or your listeners. If you think about holding a bottle of water, right? If you're not squeezing it hard enough, it's going to fall. Right? So remember those limp handshakes? A lot of women will take your finger and shake it. No, it's like, oh, please. And guys will squeeze that bottle so that the water's going to pop out the top. Youch, right? You know. So if you think about holding a bottle of water, that's the pressure you want to exert when you shake someone's hand.
But don't hurt it.
And then people make this mistake a lot too. If you're in a networking or business meeting or something, and you wear a name tag, it goes on your right side. And that is because when I go to shake your hand, it's right hand to right hand, and I'm looking directly at your collar, which is where your name badge is.
Right.
So there's 2 tips, free of charge. So what I really do, it starts when I get a call from either a client, mom, or the client themselves. Juniors and seniors in high school preparing to interview for college. Juniors and seniors in college preparing for their first real job. And then 30, 40, and 50-year-olds. A lot of women, but I have men clients as well. Looking to transition. I've been a nurse my whole career. What skill sets do I have that are transferable? Because generally when we're in our own selves, we don't see what those skills can transfer to. So those are really who I work with, and I remake their resume. I do interview preparation. So what questions do you anticipate the interview is going to ask? And then I turn the tables. What questions are you going to ask? Because an interview is really important when it's two-sided. Not only are they determining whether you're their right fit, but you need to decide if this is the right fit for you, right culture, right title, right responsibilities, right? Because that's an expensive investment on both parties' part.
I agree.
And then I work a lot with clients after the interview, once they get offered the job. First on negotiation skills as they're negotiating the salary and stuff, but also once they've started, because a lot of people are like, oh, I've been a nurse forever. I know how to do this role. And they run in and they roll over people, right?
Oh, I see.
So that doesn't make for a great first impression. If you're going in a management role, what do you do first? You should be listening a lot, because you don't want to fix what's not broken. And how do you know what's not broken and broken until you listen to people, right? So I coach people a lot on that. I also coach executives on, so this is your first management meeting. How do you run that meeting? What's your agenda look like? How do you listen? How do you engage people who are the silent type at the table? And so it goes from there.
That's fantastic.
And then the other piece that I add is wardrobe consulting. So I go into your wardrobe and we transition it. It may be you're new into the work world. So we need to look at not those torn jeans and sloppy tops, but more business attire for men and women. We may be looking at you're going from wearing a uniform to wearing a business quote uniform unquote. Or you may have lost weight, gained weight. You may have, you know, you just had a baby and now your clothes need to shift or whatever. You just may have more confidence now. And you don't know how to wear that red suit jacket. So that's really the breadth of what I do.
I like that.
And I teach the soft skills that nobody teaches anymore. From eye contact and listening skills to body language, voice intonation, and etiquette. Nobody teaches etiquette.
Meaning like write a thank you card after the interview?
Thank you card after the interview. And email's fine, but follow it up with an in-person handwritten thank you card, right? I still have some in my drawers that people gave to me. And if there's two people very equal in their qualifications, guess who's going to be the one to get that job?
That's exactly what one of my old managers said. He said, I only hire people who wrote me
right?
Thank you card. And luckily I did.
Goes such a long way, and people don't think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I know in my interviews, in my background, I've been taken to dinner by physicians to see about personality, right? They kind of narrow it down to 1 or 2 people, and then they take you to dinner. How many wines are you drinking, if at all?
Sure.
Do you know how to use your silverware from the outside in?
Definitely.
Do you know where to put your napkin when you get up to go to the bathroom?
Yep. Well, these are great tips.
Thank you.
I love it. I can definitely see how people could help. And the thing is, sometimes it's even things that maybe someone has learned at some point, but it was decades ago. So even to get that reminder, just so you're a little bit more conscious of either how you're sitting or how you're holding your hands when you sit, or if you're looking at someone, or I mean, especially with kids these days.
Absolutely.
But where they, one of my friends who owns a restaurant was talking about this teen who he hired and how he would always have his AirPods in his ears. And he's like, you need to take those out. You need to be able to talk to, I'll tap it if someone says something to me. He's like, no, you need to be fully aware of your surroundings.
See, he needs my customer service training.
Exactly.
Before
things like
COVID,
that, where it's just a generational thing. Like the teen thought nothing of it. And the owner was like, no, don't do that. So
before COVID, some of my clients were banks and restaurants for just those reasons, right? You have to make eye contact. Who's more important if there's a caller coming through on the phone or a person walking through your business?
Right. And even with networking, which sometimes I do find a little tricky, they say you should really just be engaging with the person with whom you're speaking. But when you see people, it's hard for your eyes to not divert and be like, hey, but you really should just be focused on the person.
Sure.
But that's
there's a balance there as well, right? Because if you see someone off in the distance and you catch each other's eyes, then you bring that person into that conversation.
True, and you can
now you become a connector.
True.
Right? That's Susie, meet Jerry. Right. That kind of thing. So there's a balance to all of that.
I agree.
But those are the nuances that nobody teaches you.
Right.
And it's very intimidating. I know I was intimidated for years to walk into a room and not know maybe anyone or 1 or 2 people. And so what do? You gravitate towards that 1 or 2 people. Let's go get a drink together. Let's go to the buffet together, right? I always tell my clients, and I try to do this myself when I'm walking into an event like that, have a goal. I'm going to meet 5 new people.
Right. I'm going to
you only meet 3,
right.
That's okay. If you've done 7, wow, good for you if you've extended your goal. And it's more than getting a business card, right? It's engaging in a conversation first, and then you ask for the business card.
Definitely.
And then when you go back, you sit at your desk and you write a thank you letter. Heather, it was so nice meeting you earlier today. How about coffee? I'd love to learn more about your podcast.
Great. So before we wrap it up today, what else would you like to say, either about your book, your experience, your philosophies, just to wrap it up a little bit?
I think we've covered a lot of ground, actually. I usually will end by saying, remember that smiles are contagious.
I like that.
Because it's true.
It is very true.
And it makes a difference in someone's life every day.
It does.
You don't know what that cashier in the grocery store is dealing with. You don't know what that teacher on your way in to drop off your kindergartner is dealing with. And if you can smile and just say, hi.
Yep.
And, in our culture, what we do a lot is we say, how are you? Do we really care? No. Are we really going to hang around while you give me a dissertation of my husband and I just had a fight this morning and I woke up on the wrong side of bed?
Right.
No. So why do we ask that question? Right? It's meaningless. And so I teach and coach people to say, hi, with a smile. How can I help you today? Or what's your plan today?
Right.
Or something along that line. Right. Unless you're really intimate with somebody, and it's like, you're not smiling, your eyes are telling me, what's up? Let's go chat for a minute, right? But then when you do that, mean it from the heart and take that time. Or you could say, I can't meet right now, but do you have time at 10 for coffee? I can meet you.
Right.
And then people know you're sincere. You're authentic. And that's what it's really about. That's how you build relationships. And in this small community called Tucson, isn't that what we need to continue to do?
Yes. Cheers to that. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And I do have the URL for where to get your book, The Accident, that I'll go ahead and say, but I'll also post it. But it's booklocker.com / and then there's some numbers 11593 for the English version and 11681 for the Spanish version. So that's booklocker.com. And I'll post that as well. So thank you so much for joining me today. And for those of you who are listening for the first time, you can check out my other podcasts on either Apple, Spotify, or I think they're, across many different ones for now. To get there, you can go to wanderandmuse.world, wanderandmuse.world. Feel free to leave a review on any of those links and go ahead and follow me. Thank you so much for listening. Go create something today.